bottle is every tear I'm gonna cry. At the end of this chalky bar is every dying I'm gonna try. Yeah, yeah. Got to get my shit together now. Sorry, gonna live before I die. Another day, another dollar. We all know what we are worth. Oh no, no, no! Don't bide you sitting in your tower. You're gonna crash right down. Yeah, yeah. Hey. Put on our piece, read between the lines. That is death and that is birth. Just before my daddy said, look at me real mean. He grabbed me by the collar, girl. You just got to go clean. Yeah. He said, you know you are my special girl. I want the best for you, you gotta want it for yourself. Don't look up or down, look straight ahead and step into the world. Ooh, step into the world. Thank you. Cheers.
My panelists, please put your hands together for Cate Faehrmann, our first politician on your panel. She is representing the Greens in the upcoming federal election. Helen Westwood on my far right. She is representing the Labour Party in state government. She was elected to the Legislative Council in 2007. Christine Forster is a local councillor, I believe, right here? Yes. Right here, right in our hometown. She's committed to principles of common sense government, genuine sustainability, free enterprise, and respect for the individual. She is also...
And I'm a Liberal.
Hey?
I'm a Liberal.
She's a Liberal. And her brother's Tony Abbott. But we're not just going to talk about that. And I don't know, I'm never going to have any booze, because like, we had that one time, and it made everybody really uncomfortable. And it's really not very much fun. And it's rude on top of it. So let's get into it. I'm not even going to ask you guys if you have rocks in your head, but what I'll do is kind of go back to what we spoke about and Anne touched on in the first panel. Is that, and I'd like to know this from each of you. We were talking about why a woman would go into politics, because I mean we know that women have quite a hard road to hoe in many jobs, but in politics it can be the gloves are off in a lot of ways. So I'd like to know from each of you, like, what did you need to decide, and what were the things that made you decide to become a politician and within the party that you are in? Cate, would you like to lead off?
Sure, Cate.
Thanks, Cate.
Thanks, Cate. What made me become a politician is, to be honest, really the environment and climate change. I mean, that's the really big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I just think until we deal with the issue of what we are doing with this planet, then we can be doing all this other stuff, but we are really going to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. So that's really what drives me every day. In terms of the internal stuff, joining the Greens, it was a no-brainer. I was in student politics. I was at Griffith University in Queensland for a while on a broad left ticket in the 90s, and I was determined not to join any political party. I was with Labor Left and the Greens and really determined not to do it. But in the end, joining a political party, if you want to actually, make a difference politically, if you see all these people making awful decisions, largely men, really, like full-on decisions that impact on the community and impact on our planet and really make the world a terrible place, then I feel like you have to get really political, actually, if you want to make a difference. And for me, you have to join a political party, and for me, the Greens was the one to join. And, you know, we were talking about the Greens before, and we can address that a little bit as we go on. But I'm glad I made the decision, but yeah, it's a pretty brutal, pretty tough business. And in my my last speech, I was just in Parliament for 3 years. I've just resigned I was a state MP. I stood down to contest the Senate. I'm the lead Senate candidate for the Greens at this federal election. And my last speech in Parliament addressed what I thought was the appalling behaviour and sexist behaviour and the boys' club of what is not only the New South Wales Upper House but every Parliament across the country. And I tell you what, the guys didn't like it.
There you go. Christine, what made you decide to go into the arena and to join the Liberals?
I'd got to a stage of life, I have 4 children, I was married for 20 years, and I had always, like Kate, I was involved in student politics. I'm embarrassed to say I was actually even further to the right when I was a student politician than the Liberal Party, if that's at all possible. but over the course of my adult life, I moved further and further towards the centre. From where I had
a big move.
I'm talking that up. It was the Democratic Club, which was kind of the student representative arm of the old DLP, which is probably in social issues a lot more conservative than the Liberal Party is. So I wasn't a young Liberal, but I was involved in student politics, and then I sort of left university and went off and started living my life, and was taken down a path of getting married, or I went down a path of getting married, having children. I had young children. I was working full-time as well. You don't have a lot of, and this was touched on by the previous panel, you don't have a lot of time for politics if you're so busy looking after young children and earning a living. So I came back to politics. I've always had a huge commitment to local government, particularly, and I was committed through various avenues to local government while my children were growing up in that period. But I came back to it when my children were of an age that they weren't so dependent on me that I couldn't commit more time elsewhere. But the main thing was I'm really committed to my community and my local community and to making a difference in the world that I live in. And to me, local government is where you really, with all huge respect to state politicians, state parliamentarians and federal parliamentarians, I'm close to both. I really think that local government is where you have a huge impact on people's day-to-day lives, and that's where I wanted to be involved. So that's what took me into it.
You into it. Helen.
Thanks, Kate. Well, my beginnings were a little different from both Kate and Christine. I was never involved in student politics. I'm the daughter of a cleaner, very working class family, and I really came to join the Labor Party because I was a trade unionist. That was not as an organiser, but simply as a trade unionist and wanting equity for workers and wanting good working conditions and decent wages. And so I joined the Labor Party as a very young woman. I was already married when I was 17 years of age. And I had, yes, you do stupid things when you're young. I reckon I take the prize for the most stupid.
As well.
No, I said that's really young.
Yeah, okay.
I was married at 22 and I thought that was young. Yeah.
And then I had 2 children by the time I was 23. One of those children has a disability, and that really politicised me. Once, and I was living on the outskirts of Sydney. Once you're in a low-income family living on the outskirts of Sydney with a child with a disability, no services, you become really political. Otherwise, you don't get anything. And that's what really politicised me. And from that, I went into community work. I worked with disadvantaged communities in southwestern Sydney in disability services, women's health, and in generalist community services. And that just made me absolutely determined to be part of making a difference. And to make a difference, you have to be in a decision-making role. And so I stayed in the party. I've been active in the party, in the Labor Party, all of that time. Yes, I've had doubts. There's no doubt about it. I think, like most of us on the left of the Labor Party at times, we've questioned, what are we doing here? But I'd rather be in the party and actually making a difference, and you can do that. Then my marriage ended. I fell in love with a woman, and I've been in a same-sex relationship since then. And I moved back to the town I grew up in, or the local government, which is Bankstown. And there I was in Bankstown. We had a council with no women on it. We had a male state member, a male federal member, and I just thought that is not good enough. There's no woman's voice in this community. And here I was, a household of women, 2 daughters, same-sex relationship, and women did not have a voice in my community. So I wanted to be that voice, and I was.
Awesome. So Helen, tell me, you know, in a climate that seems to be increasingly misogynistic and a bit sexist, what are your personal experiences? What have you had, you know, personal experiences that you can share with us that can give us a bit of a snapshot of how it is for you in your daily work life? Is it 80% like wonderful and some great? I mean, obviously you have great success stories, otherwise you wouldn't do it. But there's also the negatives. Can you give us a? Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's really it's worth making the point. I really encourage people to get in politics, and I agree with Christine. Local government is just a really excellent opportunity to make a difference in your local community. You can really do things at local government level, and I am still passionate about local government. I was the only woman for 8.5 years on that council, and we were facing some really serious social issues in our local community. And my view was that the issues we faced had a lot to do with the fact that men had run the agenda. When I got on the council, we were spending like $76 per head on sport and rec facilities and $6.77 on community services. Surprise, surprise, we had some really serious social issues. So I was able to turn that around. And what was interesting was being the only woman on there, the guys often didn't have the courage to stand up to me because I really brought a different perspective. Yeah. But I have to say, what I did find was I was often isolated and won out. And the way that I survived that was to surround myself with women that I knew that I could go to and confide in and talk to. They were actually my reference group. That's what I ended up doing. And some of them was, you know, a couple of senior women in the council, but they were also women outside, business women, women in the public sector, and other community workers. And that was something that, I mean, you do have to find a way to survive. But I'd rather be there than walk away and leave it all to the boys. So would you consider yourself naturally, you know, go in there, get in there? Because in the first panel, we also touched on women sometimes second-guessing themselves, not believing fully that they can just say exactly what they want because maybe it's not what we're brought up to do specifically. So how did you go against that trend or that feeling?
Look, you do have those self-doubts. There's no doubt about that. I think that what I found was having the support of other women who were like-minded, and they did encourage you. And yeah, look, there were times when it was really isolating. It was very lonely, but I do think that that's what women are often capable of. We actually find ways to overcome those real barriers and difficulties that we face.
Absolutely. Christine, jump in.
Can I ask Helen a question?
Sure, take over my job. No, I'm joking.
Did you get support from any men on Bankstown Council?
Yeah, there was, one or two guys, but then I had some real resistance, there's no doubt about it. And, you know, there's no doubt that my sexuality would be raised as well, particularly in a community like that. I mean, I didn't run as the lesbian candidate in North Water Bankstown, I can assure you, but
you were probably soon labelled that, yeah.
But, it was my then partner and I went to things together. People knew certainly the movers and shakers, if there is such a thing in Bankstown, but anyway, there were those folks, the directors of the sports club, they all knew. And initially, it was a disadvantage, but you can overcome that. And the other thing I find that if you deliver, then that's the best answer.
Delivery tells a lot, doesn't it? So, Christine, what's your personal experience?
What with
being in politics and misogyny, or has it been smooth sailing?
Look, I have to say, I'm on City of Sydney Council, and we have 7 women and 3 men, and you know, a very dominant, long-standing lady Lord Mayor. So it's probably, and City of Sydney, I guess, because it's the global city, local government, local council. I guess it has a certain more forward-thinking approach, and certainly it's been in the hands of politicians who've had more progressive views. The Sydney local area tends to be a progressive. It's an inner city progressive electorate, and so they have elected people that have progressive, forward-thinking views. I mean, when I was elected last September is the first time we've ever had 2 Liberals on the City of Sydney Council. So I would have to say my political experience, I haven't really come up against that kind of competition, misogyny, if you want to call it. I went into a pre-selection within the Liberal Party against men. I won that. And certainly on council, I never feel like I'm competing as a woman. I just feel like I'm competing as a politician.
As a councillor.
Yep.
Cate?
Yeah, when I first got into Parliament in 2010, and I remember my first... And I feel like it's everywhere, actually, in political life, and I feel like it's everywhere through the chamber, in the way that people behave in the chamber. In the upper house, we had 2... both of the opposition leader and deputy opposition leader and leader of the government and deputy leader of the government in the House were all men, which meant that during question time it was just the men sitting there facing each other, 2 men who would inevitably be sitting there on the swivel chairs with their legs spread very wide, like kind of going around and looking at everybody like this, like seriously, and just that in itself. And I just go, oh my God, look
how
at
much
how
do they get paid to do that?
Look at how they're sitting,
Too
let
much.
alone what they're talking
We
about.
sit behind tables in the City of Sydney.
Well,
City of Sydney, you get a table.
honestly, it is like that to me was, and I would say to my female Greens colleague, can you get like a load of how these guys are sitting, let alone the behaviour?
How are the hands? Like this, pointing that direction?
But one of my very first meeting that I had as an MP, and it was with the opposition at the time, which was the coalition opposition, and my colleagues, and I happened to be the only female. It was with a crossbench, which is Christian Democrats, all men, Shooters Party, all men, the coalition, which was the opposition, all men, and the Greens. And at that time, I was the only female Greens crossbencher as well, and there's now 2 of them. But anyway, so I'm in that room, and I was trying to convince the current roads minister, who's a National Party MP, about a motion. Yes, Duncan Gay. You know, the flag, the gay flag along, Oxford Street. Yeah, that minister.
That minister.
And remove it, minister. And the not so gay Duncan Gay minister. And
It's a misnomer.
Yeah, I'm so not gay. Yeah.
So he was in that meeting, and I'm trying to convince him to support a motion I had on the table about I really wanted, coal seam gas. It's going to pollute our waterways, Minister. It'd be great if you guys can, not Minister, he wasn't at the time, if you could support it. And he said to me in front of everybody and all the staffers and stuff, Cate, now you're a bright girl.
Ouch.
And I'm like, what? I am sorry, but you do not call me a bright girl in this meeting. And he's like, oh, hold on, hold on. And everybody, all
Don't
the guys,
get your
the men,
knickers
and everybody was all a bit, whoa, what's she doing? Oh. And anyway, then and that was literally my first meeting with all these guys. And I'm going, what planet are you on? And I had to leave, actually. So I used the fact I had to leave as a bit of a, I'm going to get up and walk out of this meeting type thing. And I said, look, I've just got to go. But I wasn't, looking upset or distraught. But as I left, I said to my male, as they all were, one of my colleagues, I patted him on the head as I left and said, I'll just leave it up to Ian Cohen to deal with my stuff because he's a bright boy, as I left. And it wasn't until I said that I think they got what he did, that I called this MP a bright boy and patted him on the head patronisingly. So it is everywhere for me. Like, it's not for me. I just think we've got to name it. It's quite full on.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna delve a little bit deeper. I'm gonna put each of you really on the spot, and I want to ask you if you could change one policy in your party. If you could change one policy. I've got the microphone. I can ask what I want. If you could change one policy in your party, what would it be? Are you allowed to say stuff like this when you're a politician? Cate, I'm going to keep you on mic. What do you think? Or you love it all? I'm down with that.
Oh my God.
Or if there was one policy that you just would like, that's one thing it's got to be done. It's one thing I've got to change. Everybody may not agree with it, but it's something that it's got to happen.
Okay. For me, it's probably not the policies. Like, I actually think that I'm really proud of our policies. I think they are absolutely top-notch, based on full-on incredible principles, ecological sustainability, social justice. I think our policies rock, right? They are absolutely solid and wonderful. If I could change one thing, it's probably in some ways, for the Greens, the resistance for us is not our policies, it's how people perceive us, our professionalism, sometimes our culture. That's, I'm being honest. It's if I'm working for change within the party, it's in some ways how we get our message out, it's how we talk to people, it's how, it's not what we're saying, perhaps, it's how we're saying it, and it's potentially the conversations we're having with people. And in some ways, sometimes it might be because we put ourselves potentially in a position that we think we know what is best for people, and I think that actually is one of the faults or the negatives of our party, and a lot of people are actually in there trying to work through that and talk to people and stuff. I'm bearing all here. I think
that's where I was.
I'm
going
bearing
for.
all. I wouldn't be saying that on 7:30. I can tell you that. But
no.
But yeah, I think for the Greens we've got a lot to say, and 80%, 85%, right, of people are apparently completely passionate about environmental issues. The Vote Compass thing on the ABC, I keep talking to people about all of these people that have filled out the Vote Compass thing on the ABC website, and people are saying to me, "Oh, I've just filled out the Vote Compass thing and they're telling me that I'm a Greens voter." And I'm like, yeah, I know, but there's more to it than the policies, right? There's the perception of the party, and there's how everybody comes across. And I think for us, and I think we're getting there, and a lot of we are reaching out to heaps of wider audiences. One last thing on that, one of the biggest, really big exciting things for us, I think, is how we are talking to, and it's not quite this audience, but farmers and regional communities about issues like coal seam gas and protecting land and water and stuff. And we're literally, I'm sitting around the kitchen table with farmers that have farmed their land for generations that would have just probably gone, ugh, at the Greens, 5 years ago, who are literally welcoming us and talking to us about issues. So we are, we are. So it's not the policies. I think it's our message and how we're getting it across.
Christine, because I think sometimes that's what's missing with politicians, is that's always the message, but without ever kind of admitting, well, maybe there's a little bit of something on the side. Christine, what in your party,
Cate,
what would you like to change?
It's a no-brainer for me.
Actually, this is an easy question for you.
Yeah, this is really easy. Thank you.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Dolly
Pass.
Dixon. Great. Yeah, of course, it's marriage equality.
Yeah.
This would be the one issue that I take issue with the Liberal Party. I take issue with my brother. That's been well documented. I would like to see that change. It is really, it's an important social justice issue. I think everybody in this room would agree with me on that. And I would really like to see, we were just talking at the table before, it's my belief that it has to be really the conservative side of politics that really has to come along to affect these types of reforms, because without the conservative part of the conservative spectrum taking it on board and accepting it, those changes, those very important social changes don't happen. And I think we need the Liberal Party. Well, let's look at the federal parliament. If the Liberal Party doesn't have a conscience vote or change its policy, it won't go through.
So do you think, I mean, you do have the ear of the possible future Prime Minister. Do you think we will have a time when there will be a conscience vote in the Liberal Party?
Look, I wouldn't like to second guess it.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be, and I'm sure Helen would concede or agree that, I mean, there are a lot of people in the Labor Party that don't agree. It's Greens Party policy, but a lot of people in the Labor Party still have to be talked around to this. Julia Gillard didn't vote for marriage equality. Kevin Rudd only came round in the last matter of months. And it was great that he came around. I mean, any time a senior Australian politician backs this reform, for my money, you beaut. But we need to bring politicians from all sides. We particularly need to bring the Conservative side of politics along. And Tony has been very clear about, you know, they went to the last election with the Marriage Act as it stands being their policy. They're going to go to this because of that, and it was a hung parliament. Because of that, they'll go to this election with that. But it will be a matter up for discussion and debate in the new party room. So, you know, it's my wish and desire that if there are new Liberal parliamentarians elected, that they put that on the table, they debate it, they have a robust debate. Given that things have moved on in the last 3 years, you know, there was a debate in the lower house. The Labor Party decided to give a conscience vote. That would all be part of our party's discussion, and that there could be some shift on that. It can only come from within the party.
Thank you. Helen, if there was one thing that you could change about the Labor Party policy or otherwise, what would it be?
It's not so much a policy that I'd like to change, and this would, I don't know if I get very much support for this, but I'd actually like to take away the conscience vote in our party on a number of issues. Now, and it's interesting that people choose that because a lot of debate in the media, when there is a conscience vote, you will hear a lot of commentators say what a great thing it is, because actually they hear members of parliament speak from their heart. They really put their own view on it rather than the party spin on whether it's a policy or whether it's a piece of legislation. However, within my party, there are two areas in particular that are of concern to me, whether it's three, whether it's a conscience vote. That is marriage equality, and the other, of course, is abortion and women's reproductive rights. These are two areas that I'm passionate about, as well as the rights of the terminally ill. Now, for me, as a party member, and I would argue very strongly, when we go to the electorate with a set of policies, they can vote Labor knowing that is our policy. Not that maybe they will and maybe they won't get it. I think that is something that, as a party, we really need to review. I think it'll be a struggle. I mean, the other important part of that for me is that a lot of people in the Labor Party do an awful lot of work, and I'm sure it's the same within the other two parties, to change our policies. You know, we debate really strongly within our branches, then up at our other levels, our electorate councils, then onto conference. And people really work very hard to bring the party with us and to bring delegates with us to get reform of our own platform and our own policies. And then I think when we do like we do with marriage equality, I don't think it should be a conscience vote. I know others will disagree with me, but that's something that I would certainly like to change.
Can I just say in relation to the conscience vote issue, when I was in Parliament, I had a Rights of the Terminally Ill bill, voluntary euthanasia, in other words, that came before the New South Wales Upper House. I brought it before the New South Wales Upper House. And the amount of people in the community who were so outraged that the MP that was their MP kind of representing, well, it was the Upper House, but voting for them was voting on their conscience on an issue that 83 or 85% or whatever in terms of people who have a terminal illness whose pain and suffering cannot be alleviated to be able to request assistance from their doctor to die if that is their wish, right? That's what 85% of people... They were so angry that the majority of the politicians were going to vote against it, and in fact they were really angry that not a single coalition MP, despite the fact that it was apparently a conscience vote, not a single coalition MP voted for it. And people were really discussing this whole idea of a conscience vote in the community, because they were saying these people are there, they're elected to represent the people. And in fact, who are they representing? 85% of people want this. We're lobbying and lobbying and lobbying. So it is an issue, I think, the whole conscience vote issue, and I don't think the community likes it.
Commentators do.
Well, yeah, and to back up what you're saying, Cate, I think that Australians believe that they elect representatives that represent them. And they expect them to actually exercise their conscience in a way that reflects their own conscience. And I don't know how you structurally repair that, but I certainly support what you're saying.
I'm going to kind of go back to some like local community stuff. You know, we've had a lot of conversation in our community about over-policing at community events, especially at Mardi Gras. I'd really like to know your opinions on that, and if in your opinion that can be shifted. Christine, you said you're a local councillor. What are your opinions on the violence that we've seen on our streets over Mardi Gras, etc.?
Yeah, look, Cate, you know, any time you have conflict in any type of environment like that, it's a terrible thing. It's terrible for the people involved. It's a terrible thing for the community. I was shocked. I was as shocked as everybody else was about what happened with those incidents at Mardi Gras. And I've heard, anecdotally evidence of or stories of people having other, incidents around the place. That is awful. I thought we'd left that all behind. And, Julie McCrossan, who's a 78er, we had talked about that when we met, or I've heard her talk about that. And it was just a terrible, terrible retrograde step. What I think has happened since then, and I've actually, and Michael Rollick here, who's the CEO of Mardi Gras, is also on this community consultation committee that the Surrey Hills Police have set up in response to the incidents at Mardi Gras and other things, but mainly in response to that. And they are really very proactively wanting to address what occurred, wanting to engage with Mardi Gras as an organisation and the community more widely as to how they can avoid this kind of incident happening again. Nobody wants it. No. Yes, they absolutely have, and I think you're having terrific, negotiations with them. Yeah.
Did y'all hear that?
Yeah. Concrete steps
There's
that are
concrete
taking
steps
place.
that the police have taken in consultation with Mardi Gras, but also
the community at large.
Yeah,
and that is a terrific signal that they're not going to be sitting on their hands. They are responsive. They also acknowledge how terrible it was and how much we need to move forward and make things better and make sure it doesn't happen again.
But also we're going to inspect and monitor it. We're going to be much more active in making sure that compliance about what people are saying that they're going to do actually doesn't happen.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you very much.
Yay.
I think we're gonna go. Do you have an opinion on that, Helen?
Oh, I'll just make the comment. But my partner Loretta's brother's quite a senior police officer out in Western Sydney, out in Western New South Wales now, and he's done some really tough gigs, including drugs in King's Cross. And also, got to say, while I was mayor of Bankstown, I had a really great relationship with the police. We had some really serious issues around crime. We had a lot of drive-by shootings. We had the gang rapes, which are an absolutely horrendous part of Bankstown's history and the community's history. But I found you could work really well with the police, but one of the difficulties is, I think it's adequate training. I think that's imperative. But also you would find that we had such young officers with little experience, often placed in the busiest and most demanding commands.
Yeah, and I think
I do think we've got to keep that in mind. It's a tough job to be a copper.
It
It
and
really
that came out
is.
at the forum.
And we
at the
rely on
forum
them for an
with
awful
Mardi
lot of
Gras
stuff.
Police.
Part of the problem was they weren't local. A lot of the police that were there stationed at Mardi Gras weren't locals.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the same kind of sensitivities, the same training, the same exposure and experience to how diverse our community is.
I know, but also we should have police who have that same training working
I
right
agree,
across
absolutely.
Sydney, right, for all
And
the
that's
kind of
what was
young lesbian and
discussed.
gay
Yeah.
LGBTIQ youth in Western Sydney who
Absolutely.
are, but yeah, I agree with what Helen said in terms of, majority, and we heard from the police, like, of course, the relationships have just built and developed so well, which is why everyone was just so disappointed and distressed at the video, because everyone was thinking, oh my God, we're back there. I thought this was okay. But you know what? Video phones and everything, capturing a lot of this stuff. I think people and the cops and everyone are on notice so much. And yeah, I think we're getting there. But the community was just so alarmed at what happened, and we know that wasn't an isolated incident that night.
No, it was
and we
not
know that other
No,
things
it
came
wasn't.
through as
But
well.
certainly every indication I've had from the police is exactly that. They know that they should be able to bring in police from elsewhere in Sydney and have them absolutely as open to what they might see, what they might see at Mardi Gras, and to not respond to that in what is a negative fashion.
Yeah, I think
they're aware of it, from what I've been told anyway.
Helen?
The other thing I'd just like to add, look, I've been in politics long enough to remember when the police force in this state were really subject to awful politicisation. There was a really awful period, and it put the force and individual officers, I think, under really huge pressure. And I think what I learned, and certainly what you're saying, is that it's actually about a partnership. If we are going to have a safe community, we do rely on our police to help us ensure our community is safe. And I think community leaders actually have a responsibility to work in partnership with the police.
And we have a responsibility to be present in their briefings, to be part of that education.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because
I
without
agree.
that, it's...
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
All of our organisations will be like going to the academy, will be part of the briefing.
Yep.
And it's essential.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to go to another what if. Are you afraid? It's another, yeah. We're going to go to another what if. And okay, so we'll start with Cate. Putting yourself in the shoes of a female who has escaped torture in Afghanistan, what would your choice be? And would you pursue getting on a boat to Australia, seeking asylum given the opportunity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that... Honestly, like, this is the only choice that so many people are having, fleeing persecution, right there. And when they get to the place where they can get on the boat, Indonesia, the reason they're kind of actually getting on the boat when they get to Indonesia or Malaysia is because they've got like decades to wait to get their assessment or assessment for asylum process. Like the UNHCR has like zero, well, not zero, a couple of people are processing claims, and there is literally like decades, right? There are thousands of people there with no hope, they have no status. So if you've fled war, and who knows what other torture you said, and you're a persecuted minority, I'm assuming, Hazara potentially,
Hazara, let's say, yes,
fleeing
because that's a lot,
Afghanistan.
majority of.
And then your one chance of life and hope and risk. We all take risks in life, right? We all do take risks. Getting on the boat because there's actually potentially a really great life at the other end. You're going to do that. But now what happens is people do that and they're getting on that boat, and then the Prime Minister of the country that you're hoping your life is at, the Prime Minister of that country has suddenly determined that no, you're not going to get there, and you're going to end up on some Pacific island that you had no idea you were going to. Some Pacific island, and in fact you can go nowhere else but either live in that crazy Pacific, not crazy, but Pacific island that you didn't want to get to, or you have to go back to where you fled. Honestly, can you imagine if you were in that position trying to get somewhere and the Prime Minister of the country you were trying to get to locked you up indefinitely? Like it's yes.
Yes,
for the short answer, you would get on the boat.
Christine, it's a hairy topic, isn't it?
You asking me the same question?
I'm asking you the same question, Christine.
I thought I was going to get a different one. I was hoping.
No, you're getting the same question.
Would I look? I cannot put myself in the shoes of a persecuted Iranian woman.
Yep.
I can try to. It's a really tough question, but my answer would probably be today, no, because I don't want to be resettled in Papua New Guinea. If my object is to get on a boat, if I'm prepared to take the personal risk to get on a boat to come to Australia, I can weigh that up and think maybe I would take that risk. I don't think I would weigh up the risk of putting my life, in the hands of a people smuggler and end up permanently resettled in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. Helen?
Yes. The reality is, as a Hazaran woman, single woman, I wouldn't be getting on the boat. I wouldn't have the resources to do it, and I wouldn't be getting on the boat.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things we don't talk about is the gender breakdown of people who are coming via Indonesia. And I think it's something we need to consider. Have a look at the gender breakdown of those people who are seeking asylum in the many, many camps where tens of thousands, indeed, we have 1 million refugees in some places. Well, we're not carrying our load here in Australia, despite what popular opinion is and what the media will tell us. We aren't. If there's one area of policy that makes me weep, and as a menopausal woman, I weep often, but this one...
I feel your pain. I feel it.
I can feel the heat.
Joy. I embarrass myself so often in Parliament doing it, but anyway, it's not a story. Anyway, I think the thing that I find really difficult about this area is that, and look, I'm a Western Sydney person. I've lived in Western Sydney all my life. I lived, as I said, I was mayor of Bankstown. The ward I represented had Villawood, what was originally the migrant hostel, which became the detention centre. I saw the razor wire go up. But I've also seen the hardening of Australians' hearts on this issue. And when Labor did get in, I accept the criticism of our current policy. You will find many in the party who are also critical of that. But when we got into government in 2007, we did have a more humane policy. And we failed, and I have to say, I think all of us on the left of this debate failed to bring the community with us. Whatever the reason, it is, and I tell you, I'm out there, I'm out in those suburbs, and it is just awful when you hear the racism, the xenophobia, indeed Islamophobia. I think a lot of the attitude about refugees in this country has a lot to do with our fear of Muslims in particular, and I think it's something we as a community have to talk about.
But I would also, I would also add that it has a lot to do with the fact that the sheer numbers have gone up so much in the last 6 years.
Well, actually,
they have, because people are
since
seeking
the 70s,
asylum.
when the first Indo-Chinese people came in 1976. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
In that year, this year, there's no more people than came that year. But at that time, there was a bipartisan approach to not being xenophobic to the individuals that were showing up.
I mean, prior
so it's not like a crazy increase of individuals.
And I don't want to get into a discussion about federal, asylum seeker policy, but the stark facts are that since 2007 the numbers have skyrocketed, and the community has unfortunately responded with a knee-jerk to that. So.
I think you've got to think of where this all came from in terms of this fear and how it all began. And you try and look back at where did this begin? And I think it began with Pauline Hanson's inaugural speech to Parliament, when she said, in her inaugural speech, she said, we don't invite, I invite who comes into my living room, so surely we have a say in who comes into this country. So that was Pauline Hanson, and she said we're in danger of being swamped by Asians and other things. That was her inaugural speech. And then suddenly, oh my God, there's this little rise, little glitch, and so suddenly Pauline Hanson's getting a bit of a following. And of course, 2001, federal election, John Howard, bang, the Tampa, and his fantastic slogan during that election, which was, we will decide who comes into this country in the circumstances in which they come.
Same message, different person.
I think he gets this from Pauline Hanson. And then from there, we've got this fear of people arriving by boats on our shores, whereas we look back at Malcolm Fraser and you were saying the Indo-Chinese Vietnamese who have made an enormous contribution. How did this happen? Seriously? John Howard and the Liberals adopting Pauline Hanson's policy.
Now, I have to say something about that. It won't be controversial. But, I mean, what we have just talked about was that prior to the last 6 years, our borders were controlled. And there was bipartisan approach to how we allow people to come into our country. Unfortunately, over the last couple of years, that's been taken out of our control. The people smuggling business has become beyond our control.
It's not illegal though, you know that, don't you?
What's not illegal?
To arrive, seek asylum by boat.
I don't know the technicalities of it, but we are certainly not inviting boats to arrive in Australia. The fact... Beg your pardon?
We've only got...
What was the question?
Wait, you know what? We're actually going to open up the floor after one more question.
I probably won't be able to answer, but...
Yeah, to your question. So, Vanessa, if you can get the microphone ready, that'd be great. Helen, I see you. Would you like to roll in on this before I go to another question?
Well, Christine raised the issue of borders, and I just find it amazing. We just keep talking about it, you know, through the prism, I think, you know, of fear. But if you, we live, and we are, no, you're not. No, I'm not. Oh, beg your pardon. I wasn't saying that. I apologise if that's what I inferred. I'm not
a local politician.
I am talking more broadly about Australians and the feedback that I get. I mean, and you know, the reality is when you're an Anglo person, I'll tell you, people will say things to you because they assume that you have the same attitudes as them. And I hear this stuff, and it horrifies me.
So, is it?
Yeah, it is horrifying. But you know, look, we are really insular as Australians. If we lived in Europe or in other parts of the world, like, you know, we're an island. You know, have a look at how many people are in Germany at the moment. Have a look at those who are going over the borders of other countries. They're walking in, you know. I mean, we just, I just think in Australia, regretfully, we are insular, and we need to change it and challenge it.
Our geography gives us that.
It does. Okay, we're going to move on. I mean, we could sit here and talk all night long about that one thing, but we're going to move on, and then we're going to open up to the floor because we are running out of time. Helen, you have been invited to the World Conference in Moscow, correct?
No.
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 No, wait a minute. Oh, sorry.
Maybe my invitation's on the way.
Invite me. I've got the wrong information. Okay. Help.
Are you going to Moscow sometime soon?
I heard from the
I wish.
Oh, don't I hate that? Just when I was moving along so smoothly. Can we go to the floor and I'll revisit my question? Vanessa, we got a question from the floor? No? I'll just have to roll with it. Okay, I'll just wing it. You got it? Well, but one thing I do want to ask, with the situation that we have in Russia at the moment, you know, there was a terrible YouTube video the other day about this young boy being basically just corralled by an angry mob. How do we react to that? I mean, we're very far away from Russia, but how should we react to that from Australia?
Russia's not the only place where they're...
Well, no, exactly.
Well,
but
I mean,
just look at other, as a hot topic.
Look, you know, we know that there have been lesbians who've actually been
jailed,
stoned for being lesbians in other parts of the world. Regretfully, it's not. Russia is not the only country in which this happens. Look, I actually do think that we have a responsibility to challenge Russia on this, and the UN, and I think there are other ways in which we can do that. I think even within our own communities here in Australia, there often homophobia, like many years ago, domestic violence was always justified on the basis of culture or religion. And I think that's something that we should also be challenging, you know, even within our own country. But certainly I think Australia has to have its voice heard on the international stage on this. I think that Russia's policy and the government's practice there, which is absolutely homophobic, I think we do have the right to challenge it, and we should.
Cool. Can we ask one more question, then we will go to the floor. Have we got a question over there? Okay, because I do want to ask Cate, what's the big... You're going into federal politics. for the first time. What's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing? Is it exhaustion or?
Actually, I wish it was just exhaustion. The biggest
You just
challenge,
wish.
the biggest challenge
Helen.
I'm facing. Firstly, obviously, getting elected is the biggest challenge.
In 31 days' time.
But there's 6 Senate seats up for grabs every election. 3 will go to the coalition, 2 will go to Labor. The last seat is the one that's up for grabs. That's a seat sometimes the Greens get, sometimes Labor gets. With the swing to the right and the far right that we're seeing around the country, we've got far right groups mobilising like never before. We've got Clive Palmer, Bob Cate, Pauline Hanson. And the group that's really trying to knock me off for the last spot in the Senate here in New South Wales is the Shooters Party. So they're getting all of these little micro groups and front groups. Literally, there are front groups forming all over the place, and they're all funneling their preferences to the Shooters Party. So the Shooters Party is my biggest competition, really, for that last spot in the Senate. So bloody vote Greens in the Senate, keep the shooters out, and we'll get in.
I got the biggest shock. I was driving to work about a month ago, and I came up Flinders Street, and there was this big billboard, the Shooters Party. I was like, what in the hell is that doing in Darlinghurst? It was gone in a couple of days, but it was Shooters Party. Where usually it's where they
gone in a couple of days.
Usually it's where they put Field Day, posters, or Park Life posters.
Shooters,
yeah. Anyways, let's go to the floor.
Whoa.
You got one for me down there, Janine. Thanks.
So I've got a niece who is about the time she was 6 and she wasn't very confident, and I tried to, build her confidence and said to her, women can do anything. And about 6 months later, Julia Gillard got elected, and my sister and I were talking one day, and she said, and we were talking about Julia, and she said, oh, is that Julia Gillard, our Prime Minister? And she was really excited because women could do anything. Now, the theme across both panels tonight is that we're facing a lot of battles, and I really feel that what hasn't been addressed is what we are doing for the generation below us and how we are changing their attitudes that women can do everything we want, and we can have children, we can not have children, we can be whatever sexual orientation we would like, but we can do anything we want. And I think that's what really needs to be addressed by everybody up here, in all the panels, in this whole room, and really educating those 7-year-olds so when they come through, they're not facing those challenges that our grandmothers faced, our great-grandmothers faced, that we're still discussing. And the blue ties, like how are you going to change that?
Is this a statement or a question?
No, question is...
Because I've got a rule.
Sorry. But yeah, exactly that, of how you three feel you can change that and their opinions.
Yeah, and we need to kind of go through these kind of briefly because we're going to try to get another couple questions off the floor. So Cate, what's the best way for us to support the young in our community to believe?
I think we've got to give ourselves, everyone, a hell of a lot of credit, actually, just in terms of where everyone has got to. I mean, Julia Gillard, first female Prime Minister, she has done that bloody hard yard of being the first woman, right? It was so incredibly brutal and awful, but she's done it. Governor-General, governors, premiers, right? So much more than 20 years ago. And we know that with marriage equality and various things, we're inching there and we're going to get there. And that's what I would say, that I don't think you're ever going to get women in politics and positions of influence and bang, suddenly it's all completely fantastic. There's a hell of a lot of issues, but I think, we just have to keep doing it. And I don't think we can expect to not get the same shit every time. After 10 years, it'll be a little bit better. After another 10 years, we'll look back going, oh my God, can you believe the crap that Julia Gillard got when she first, with the first female Prime Minister?
Yeah. Christine?
I'll be very brief on this. I think positive role models in public life, like Julia Gillard, in other areas of public life, in business, in community leadership, what have you. I think really positive messages from the mothers and aunts and sisters and what have you.
And fathers.
And fathers, the men in their lives. That is really crucial, to give those young girls as they grow up the positive messages that you are just as good as anyone else and you go out there and prove it. As the mother of two teenage daughters, I think it's very difficult to tell girls anything, and certainly they don't listen to me. But I guess signalling from everybody else around them from a very young age. Yeah.
Helen.
Well, for me, it is about having more women at every level of our society. The boards, just have a look at the appalling representation of women in some of the really large companies that make all the decisions about where all the money's going. To me, that's the big one. I want women on government boards. Thankfully, government policy has changed there and we really are getting the numbers up in critical mass. It's the same in Parliament. For me, it's the critical mass. I don't want 20%. I don't want 30%. I want 52%.
Yeah.
You know, at all levels. It's just, and I think that's what when you saw Julia Gillard as the first Prime Minister, I think the thing that Gillard said that night is that it doesn't explain all of it, but it doesn't explain none of it. You know, and she was so right about that. But the thing I have to say is that we shouldn't. I know many women are still grieving, particularly in terms of Labor women. I've spent time with Labor women who are still really hurting and grieving about the way that Gillard was removed from the Prime Ministership. They have so looked forward to having the first Labor Prime Minister who's a woman, and then to have her taken out of that position. It's been devastating for them. But for me, you know, we don't get angry, we get even. You know, I want 52% everywhere and we shouldn't walk away. You know, we have to keep demanding it, and I think that's the message. It's the message I send to my granddaughters and to my daughters.
Thank you, Helen. Have we got another right over here upstairs? Upstairs. Have we got a question? Microphone down here.
Hello. Sorry, I have a few broken bones, so the standing up part isn't very graceful.
You can sit if you like.
Hello, it's wonderful to have you all here. I just want to say that. But the other thing I want to say is there's been a lot of talk this evening about what failed with Julia Gillard, what isn't working with women in politics. I'd like to hear from these three amazing women what actually is working for them as women in politics.
Thank you, Nikki. I want to hear what is working, Helen.
Well, I think we have to keep reminding people that Julia Gillard got over 500 pieces of legislation.
541, yeah?
Yeah, through a parliament that I reckon no bloke could have got that through. She was a great negotiator, and I think that was a real skill she had. And quite frankly, I think that is the difference in a lot of men and women, because there is still cultural differences. I mean, the stuff that Cate referred to earlier about the way that men sit in our parliament, you know, the way they take up space like they do everywhere. Sorry, fellas, but they do. Public transport.
By the way, guys in the audience, we do love you.
But it's also about, you know, the culture and the networks and the way that men use that. And that empowers them. And I think, you know, they're the things that we need to learn by. But, you know, women do succeed. Women do make a difference. And, you know, a recent example of something that I got up I was really pleased about. And I think it was because I went around, I talked to other members of Parliament, and I got up this inquiry on the partial defence of provocation to a charge of murder, where we have seen women murdered by their intimate partners and then get off with manslaughter for 8 years after, you know, they've slit her throat 8 times. So just horrendous. Or where men have been murdered by other men on the basis that they made a homosexual advance to them. I mean, so it was a good inquiry. We got some great recommendations, and Farrell has said that he'll actually bring in those reforms that we've recommended. So, you know, women... I know that's a small thing, but it's an important thing, and we do put the issues of domestic violence, sexual assault on the agenda in our parliaments, and that's something that I think that we can be really proud of. And as I say, I encourage you all of you, participate in the political process.
Yeah, Christine, success stories.
I would absolutely echo that, and a lot of what we've talked about is a lot of that goes to the fact that women need to actually participate. They need to want to participate. Every time you have amazing women like Helen and Cate in politics, like Julia Gillard, who are amazing, successful, capable women that have something to say and bring a different perspective to our political landscape, that is an absolutely fantastic thing. And the more of that we have, the better. I mean, to my knowledge, I did actually ask my staffer to research this at some point last year. Has there been any other out female in the Liberal Party? I don't think there's been others probably, but they weren't out. But I think I'm the first out female Liberal politician. And for whatever that does, for whatever message that sends to people in our community at local, state, Australian level, that women like us can make a difference, and it's not, it might be tough, it might be hard, but it's not impossible. So if you feel it in you, have a go. Success stories, please.
So what's working about women in politics? Everything's working about women in politics, actually. I think I present, when we all kind of get asked to speak to bunches of young female students, for example, who come into Parliament and about women and leadership stuff. And these young women are just so inspiring and really wanting to hear about how we got where we got to, and their questions are just, so incredible. We've got youth parliament in there, and your MPs can sit as a speaker there. And I sat over this one on voluntary euthanasia, for example. Incredible. Like, the women in that room were just so inspiring. We're kind of sitting here potentially maybe a generation and 2 or 3 above that, but it is working, because the women who are coming through and the women who are political, who are 18, have so much confidence. I reckon in 20 years we are going to have 50%. They are going for it. We're doing it, right? We're leading the way.
Okay, we're going to throw to one more question from upstairs. Then are we out of time?
This is a question for the whole panel. I would like to know what your vision for Australia is and your vision for your party.
That's a big question.
Jesus.
We should have started with that. Okay. In 30 seconds or less. No. Your vision... We can break it down, or you just, I guess maybe to make it a little campaign speech, but in 30 seconds or less. Can you do that for me? Okay. Christine, you're ready to go.
Well, yeah, look, when we were asked to come on the panel, I was asked to provide a quote of 20 words or less, and I thought quite long and hard about that. And eventually I joked, again with my staffer, it was a 2-run consideration, because I run every day and it's my downtime, and it's when I kind of clear my head and think about, get brilliant ideas or not so brilliant ideas. But anyway, it took me 2 runs to come up with this. That was that we should strive for an ideal in which Australia is a place where every woman is judged solely on their ability to do the job. And I think that's what I would say to you. And I think I think largely my party, because it's very much meritocracy, it's the Liberal philosophy, the power of the individual, and you're judged on your merit is core Liberal philosophy. And the Liberal Party itself is taking it that way. I mean, I've just been asked to be part of a committee that is encouraging women specifically to get involved with local government, Liberal women with the Liberal Party, which is a fantastic thing, and that's coming from within the party. But I would just say that at every level, that's what we need to strive for. An Australia where women are just judged not because they're women, not because they've, how they look or their sexuality or who they choose to have, in their family or whatever, but just on their ability to do the job, which is how the men are judged.
Okay. Cate, are you ready?
Well, vision. It's kind of it's naff, but it is our vision. Really, it's what we need for Australia and the world. And it's until we get this, we're not really going to stop any of us really working and campaigning and doing what we're doing. Is we need to have a happy, healthy, equitable community living on a happy, healthy, sustainable planet. Really, and the vision. I mean, let's keep fighting for it. And the vision for the party is that we'll help us get there and play a significant role in that.
Thank you, Helen.
Vision for my party federally, I want to see us re-elected on September 7.
That's not my vision.
In the state, after the last horrendous couple of years, I want my party to use this crisis that we've endured as an opportunity to reform our party, to change its culture, to democratise it and to give the party back to its membership. That's what I want. My vision for Australia, I want us to have wonderfully planned cities that do take account of our environment but still allow people to have a really good quality of life and to have work, meaningful work. As a parent of now an adult with a disability, I want an Australia that allows every Australian to realise their full potential.
Please thank your panellists, Cate Faehrmann, Christine Forster, and Helen Westwood. Thank you so very much. All right, you guys can stick around. We're not going anywhere. You can stick around, maybe pose a few more questions to our panelists, if you like. We'd like to thank IVF Australia, and make sure you take the pamphlets on the tables. Go on, lift it up, lift it up. We'd like to also thank Mardi Gras, Slide, the Women Say Something crew. Everybody on the crew, we donate our time to this, to provide this for you. Janine, Vanessa, Bell, Jenny, Saf, Epi, Marie, Iz, and Steph. And in case you didn't know, is it takes 10 minutes, and we can maybe get it down to 8 minutes for this to sell out. The next Women Say Something will be on the 20th of November. So I'd like to thank, we had a ring-in girl, Amy Coops, and she's live tweeted for us tonight, so thank you very much, Amy, for doing that. So to take us out tonight, are we doing that? Here's our Women Say Something family member, Becky Cole, and Libby Donovan, whose hair I really, really want, with a Women Say Something theme song. And finally, make sure you have your say and your voice at the federal election. Your vote counts, and don't forget Mardi Gras, and the voting this weekend. And I'd like to thank my mom. I love you. Good night, everybody. See you in November.
And thanks, Kate Munro. Oh, so wonderful. It's always such an amazing vibe at Women Say Something, and all the women in the audience, like it's just like you're actually sitting in your lounge room with all your friends, but there's a lot of them, and a lot of them you don't know. It's excellent.
I really enjoyed it. It was really good fun, and it was terrific to have. It was great that we had a very defined Green, me a Liberal, and a Labor person, and I think it made for a really good balanced debate.
It is worth getting involved. Yeah, it's risky. Yes, sometimes it can be tough, but in the end, it's really worth it. You can achieve great things for women and for your community, and I think that's worthwhile doing.
I think the most important thing would be to be politically active. We can't step back and go, hey, this is way too hard for us. We can't step back and go, I don't have time for it. We've actually got to go in there and actually challenge again, it's the language, it's the culture. We've got to go in there and challenge it and stand up to the guys, face to face, nose to nose, eye to eye, and put the argument to them.
So look out for the next Women Say Something on November 20. You'll see a heap more audience interaction. It's all about the passion, it's about the fire, it's about the debate, but it's really about women coming together and really just talking about things that matter to us.